Hello everyone. So this will be our first module and the topic is Azure Administration. So my name is Robin and this is the AZ-103 trainings targeting this exam. So there are 4 parts in Azure Administration, but for me, I'm not going to go over all 4 parts in this session. So there will be multiple test sessions for each one. Because personally, I don't like to have one video that's longer than 45 minutes or 1 hour or even 1 hour and 30 minutes because I find it's hard for people to concentrate after a while. So the 12 modules I have showed earlier in my previous videos, so probably gonna scatter into 20 or more sessions. For this one, I'm gonna cover the Azure Portal and Cloud Shell, Azure PowerShell and CLI, and then maybe some resource manager. The ARM templates will sure be in the next session. Okay, so before we get started, so if you do not have an Azure subscription, so I highly suggest you start one free for trial. So you can go to the azure.microsoft.com on this web page. So you can see there's a start free button you can click. So it register your account for I think it's first 30 days you have $200 for as allowance to abuse, but after the first month, so what it means for 12 months of free services is it's only limited to certain uh, resources with certain skill. So here you can see this $200 credit to explore on Azure for 30 days. So the resource that's been free for 12 months is listed here. So it's you can see they have the SKU as it's B1 SVMs or Windows Virtual Machine. It's on the same scale. So what it means is they have really low RAMs and CPUs to process, and also for managed disks, blob file, SQL database, and Cosmos DB, right? So but for me personally, when I start learning Azure and even later on administering Azure, so you can start a subscription as pay as you go. We will introduce this in very late modules. But if you select one as pay as you go after these 30 days, because that's not enough for you to practice anyway. So you select pay as you go, you put on your credit card to practice, because pay as you go is only they charge you when you're using those machines, right? So once you're done practicing this resource groups or virtual network or anything, you just delete them all. Just purge everything from your Azure account. So it's stopped charging your money. So personally, when I doing this practice, I think back in 2017 and 2018, only cost me, I think, $9 a month. So it's minimum, right? It's very less. And also for if you are not in America and you have it's for like if you are located in China using the Azure host by 24 VRNet, it's around I think 1500 RMB for the first 30 days. Okay, so please subscribe one to as to practice along with the videos because I do show some demos and it's highly suggested you do along with the video or post the video to just strengthen your learnings. Okay, so let me just go back to my PowerPoint and we will go to the lesson 1. It's the Azure Portal and Cloud Shell. So this first lesson we'll divide into these 3 parts. So the Azure Portal, Azure Mobile App, the demonstration on Azure Portal, the Azure Cloud Shell, and demonstration on Cloud Shell. So yeah, this will be the landing page, the UI of your Azure page. So you have different resources on the left and your dashboard and home and services and all the others. So it's very similar to what you have here if you start using one, right? So of course you don't have this because I already started mine. That's why I have all those resources in my dashboard. For you, it will be empty in the first place. So there's also an Azure Mobile App. So for this, I'm not really going to use this to demonstrate anyway because this is not this will not be on the exam. It's just something you have to know as an IT admin, right? So the purpose of the Azure Mobile App is to let you stay connected to the cloud and check status and critical metrics anytime, anywhere. And with the Azure Mobile App, you don't need to be in front of your computer to keep an eye on your Azure resources, like your VMs and web apps. So you stay connected to no matter where you are from your iOS, Android mobile device. So it's let you work from anywhere, right, to manage. And it can diagnose and fix issues quickly with the Azure Mobile. You can check for alerts, view the metrics, and take corrective actions to fix common issues, like to restart a web app or connect to a VM directly. And be agile and respond to issues faster with the Azure Mobile App. And the third point is you can run commands to manage your Azure resources. So you can run ad hoc Azure CLI for PowerShell commands from the mobile app directly. You stay in control of your resources and take corrective actions, like we talked before. So you can start and stopping VMs from here as well. So in a way, it's not let you to create any resource, to be honest. You don't have an option to create a resource. It's rather let you to manage and check for alerts as an IT admin. So the Azure portal is what we're gonna demonstrate here. Um, when you log into here, right? So this will be the default display, right? If you want something that's in your favorite, for example, you want something that's not listed here, you can put them as a favorite, right? What we're going to talk about is if you click the help button, right? So you can launch the tour guide. If you're not familiar with Azure, click here. They will show you what each tab is for and let you get familiar with it. And you can have the keyboard shortcuts for you to manage easily. You don't have to click the button, just tap on your key. It's bring you back to the not really bring you back, just bring you to the resource you're looking for. For example, if you hold G and press D, it give you the dashboard view, right? And so we're gonna just close this real quick. So if you click the others, I think that's the one. So if you click new dashboard, right? It lets you design your dashboard. So depends on what you think it's important to look at. The default view don't really have anything that's maybe you're looking for. So for example, when this is in production, you might want to look into your service house, right? So you can say, okay, I want this to be here, and I want my metrics chart as well. But this I want to see more time and then not. So you can drag and make this large. So I also want to know all the resources I have for me to manage. So maybe we place this here. Maybe look this a little bit small and we drag this because you have all the resources, a lot of resources, right? You want to list them up. And you also want the user, let's see, maybe resource groups. Oops, that's here, right? So how many resource group you have, and some other things like security metrics, right? Some small tabs. So after you're done, you click on customizing. So this will be your dashboard. So if you click the Azure Home, it's not the one, right? It's you click dashboard, is the one it displayed. So I'm not really a design guy. This is a poorly designed, but just for demonstration purpose and perspective, you can see how things are done here, right? Okay. So that's your Azure portal. So we're gonna go over to the Azure Cloud Shell. So for people who, if you are really familiar with the PowerShell in Windows, so you can skip the next several minutes or even 10 minutes. So it's just some PowerShell app to demonstrate how things are done, right? But if you are new to this and you want to see what's new there, how things are done, just stay with us. Okay. So the Azure Cloud Shell is an interactive browser accessible shell for managing Azure resources, right? It provides the flexibility of choosing the shell experience that best suits the way you work. For Linux user, you can choose for the Bash experience. Well, if you're the Windows user, you can choose for the PowerShell experience, right? So the Cloud Shell enables access to browser-based command line experience building with Azure management tasks in mind. It leverages Cloud Shell to work, untethered from a local machine in the way only the cloud can provide. So if you do not run the PowerShell or Bash, anyway, Cloud Shell in Azure, you can launch them from the on-prem PowerShell. That's no problem. Just you have to download the module first and install them. Personally, for me, I prefer the Cloud Shell. Not because it's the advantage, just because physically, because I'm in China, if I use the PowerShell to connect, it takes me quite a while. I have to say quite a while sometimes just to log in and see the result of each command. Because the data center is even the closest is the Southeast Asia one or Japan West. It's hundreds miles from my location. That's why I launched the Cloud Shell, so I can see the result immediately. And also part of the benefits of the Cloud Shell is you don't have to authenticate yourself. You click, it just let you to start typing command. So we're gonna do a little demonstration on the Cloud Shell, right? So how to configure it, experiment with each one of this. If I log into, not log into here. So this button you click, it says in Cloud Shell, right? It just let you open. So the first time you open this, it won't launch right away. It requires a storage account to be created, so it can store all the all the commands and files you upload and blah blah blah. Right. So if you don't have one, just let you create one. So I can show you real quick. So the one created by default. If I go to my storage cloud, it's this one, right? It's this one. Okay. Now really resource group. So it just doesn't matter the resource group. This is the storage account it's required. I just because I don't have I put them in a resource group as well. We're gonna explain the definition of what's a resource group later, but just for now, remember if you need to run this, you need a storage account to be created. So also it requires resource group, blah blah blah. We will introduce this later stage. All right, so here you can run the command you want, like get help, right? So the classic command you can run. So I won't demonstrate too much of that, just to give you an idea. So how things are done in here. So you can also choose bash. So you confirm to switch. Yeah, so this is a little bit faster anyway. So yeah, just give you an idea. So we will do more of this among the demonstration. So I won't type any command here to waste your time. Just give you an idea. So the times out for the session is 20 minutes. If you do not type anything for 20 minutes, it's gonna be not automatically closed, but the session will give you a like notification, see we closed the session. So you have to relaunch, right? Okay. So the Azure PowerShell and CLI, that's for lesson 2. And as I said before, so you can launch this from your PowerShell as well. So you have just to download the necessary module for it, right? So let me drag this real quick. So let me go to this. Okay. So if for folks that's not familiar with PowerShell's cmdlets and modules, I will give you a brief introduction. For those you already familiar, skip the next 2 or 5 minutes. So you don't have to waste your time. So a PowerShell command, we call it a cmdlet, right? So the cmdlet is a command that manipulates a single feature, okay? The term cmdlet is intended to imply that it is a small command. By convention, cmdlet authors are encouraged to keep cmdlets simple and for a single purpose. The base PowerShell product ships with cmdlet that works with features such as sessions and background jobs. You can add modules to your PowerShell installation to get cmdlets that manipulate other features. So for example, there are third-party modules to work with your like FTP, administer your operating system, and access the file system. So for folks you have done some manipulation with PowerShell on Office 365, you have to install the MS Online, right? The module for MS Online, or PowerShell, etc., etc. Okay. So here you can run like things, we use the get, set, start, the verbs to do different things here, right? So for example, we can get process or get module. List all the module I have. Okay. So the command authors are encouraged to include a help file for each command, right? So that's why we type in the get help command to display all the command we can run under that. So you can have this, let's see, let's just do this get help, get, oops, detailed, yes. So this does require an update, you see. Yeah, my apology if this is in Chinese because my OS, it's by default when it shipped to me, it's in Chinese. I do require the, the vendor to have an English OS, but they seem to forget about that. So anyway, but they did give me a discount, so I just let it go. Oops, my bad. Where is it? Okay, let's let it update, right? So a PowerShell module, if you know, it's a DLL file that includes the code to process each available command. You can load the commands into PowerShell by loading the module containing them. So you can get a list of loaded modules using the get module command. So that's the one we run before, right? The available command modules I have. You can see the one for Azure. It's already installed. Anyway, we just let it update. So we just put this on a different screen so we don't waste any time here. So yeah, Azure PowerShell is also a module. It's a module that you can add to Windows PowerShell or PowerShell core to enable you to connect to your Azure subscription and manage resources. So the Azure PowerShell requires the PowerShell to function, right? So the PowerShell provides services such as the shell window and command parsing. The Azure PowerShell adds the Azure specific commands. For example, Azure PowerShell provides a new, like the one we see here, new AZ-VM, a command that creates a virtual machine inside your resources or subscription. So to use it, you would launch the PowerShell application, then issue a command like this. So this is still updating, so we just let it update. But anyway, that's why we have this here, right? So you know what's uh, things look like. So for here, to create a virtual machine, you need to first specify the resource group, the name and the image, right? It's Windows, it's Linux, you have to specify. So the Azure PowerShell is also available in two ways. So inside the browser via the Azure Cloud Shell, like we saw earlier, or with a local installation on Linux or Mac OS or Windows, right? So in both cases, you have the two modes from which to choose. You can use it in the interactive mode, in which you manually issue one command at a time, or you can do a scripting so to run things more to do more granular controls or customized controls. So the advantage if you use the Cloud Shell compared to if you launch it locally is you don't have to authenticate, right? So I think I said this before. That's why I prefer to run in the cloud because since for me to authenticate is slow anyway. So this module actually is the open source in GitHub. So folks, if you familiar with GitHub, it's actually you just download it from GitHub. But I can just show you real quick, right? So since it's still loading, let me just go here. Okay, so it's yeah, we can just download the thing and install the module, right? So I will paste the link here in the down the video comments, so you can just follow it to download. So back to our PowerPoint. Uh, yeah, so we're gonna work with locally, right? But this thing still, so let me just launch another command prompt so we don't waste any additional time. right? So for you to use, because it's local, you have to log in, right? Log in. I'm afraid this might take me quite a while to log in, but let's see. Yeah, it's always stuck on the password page. Okay, let's just give it a time. Maybe I will try with VPN on, so it might be faster. See if you'll do the trick. So I do apologize for some issues like this, because it's not something I can fix anyway. It's just the Great Firewall from China, it's doing this. Okay, never mind. We just put it next to it. So once logged in, I will come back. Right. So yeah. So I will just demonstrate this. Let's see this Cmdlet later when I logged in, hopefully. So the Azure CLI, right? So the Azure CLI is a command line program for you to connect to Azure and execute administrative commands on Azure resources. So it can run on all the OS we just introduced and allows the administrator to and developers sometimes to execute their commands through a terminal or the CMD, right? Or scripting. So instead of a web browser. So for example, to restart a VM, you would use the command such as this one, right? So it's AZ VM restart resource group my VM, right? So it's not still not logged in yet. We just give it the time. We just keep going through the PowerPoint so we can do all the demo together. So yeah, I think the same issue. It's still logging in anyway. Um, so let's do another way, right? So it's because it's only demonstration purpose. We can run from here. So let me go back to my previous slide. So I don't have a virtual machine turned on yet, but just to give you an idea on the, let me see how can it best fit, right? So, okay, so you can do oops, AZ VM restart. I think I have one called lab. Let's see, DC, right? Oh yeah, so I have to turn it on first, my bad. So all my virtual machines has been switched off. So let's turn on one real quick, okay? So you may notice I have my virtual machine here stopped and print is deallocated, right? So this is very important you deallocate them because it's uh, stop charging your money. When so if that's required, you just check on the checkbox and click the stop. So if you log into the virtual machine and you just like here, you just shut down from there, right? You just shut down from here. This doesn't do the trick. So the machine is powered off, but it will not stop charging your money. So if you select pay as you go, and it will have this one display here, say we're gonna charge the virtual machine, for example, 30 cents per hour. If you shut down from the machine itself, it still charges your money, right? You have to do it from here. That's why it said delay allocate, which means the whatever resources you're being occupying, it's being purged. You can treat it that way, so it does stop charging your money. So this is one of the things I didn't know that. I stopped the VM from the machine itself, and I notice my balance keeps dropping. So I know something's wrong. That's why I learned this. So let me refresh, see if it's okay. Sometimes you have to do this. All right. matter. Okay, it's running. So hopefully let me run the command now. So AZVM. It's lab client. Okay, it's running. Okay, even with VPN, folks still not logging in yet. I have seen this. My other class when I teach this in Chinese, my class, it takes like 30 minutes for me to actually see it happens. So that's why for my demonstration purpose, mostly I'm gonna use the Cloud Shell. Okay, it's running. Just let it. Okay, it's being finished. So if you want to see the result, right? So you can click here. So that's the VM. We go to boot diagnostic. However, it shows me, okay, it's restarted anyway. That's why. So we didn't get this page saying it's loading or anything. So it's okay. Just for demonstration's sake, so you know how things are doing. Okay, it's a CLI. So it's been 26. We can introduce a little bit more on the resource manager, and I will continue this one in the next session. So hopefully nothing is longer than 30 minutes. So you have to understand some of the terminology here for a resource. So this one will divide into 7 modules. The resource manager terminology, resource group deployments, the resource manager logs, moving the resources, remove the resource and the resource groups, and demonstration how resource group works for all these 6 points, right? So the infrastructure for your application, so it's typically made up of many components, right? So it can be a virtual machine, it can be a storage account, it can be a virtual network or a web application, a database server, or third-party services, right, etc. There's many resources in Azure, right? Countless, or container technology or machine learning, and blah blah. That's too much. I cannot even list them. So you may now see these components as a separate entities. Instead, you see them as related and interdependent parts of the single identity. So you want to deploy and manage and monitor them as a group. So the Azure Resource Manager enables you to work with these resources in your solution as a group. So you can deploy, update, or delete all the resources for your solution in a single coordinated operation. You use a template for deployment, and that template can work for different environments such as testing, staging, and production. The resource group provides security, auditing, and tagging features to help you manage your resource after deployment. So it's a consistent management layer. So right, the resource manager provides the consistent management layer to perform tasks through Azure PowerShell, CLI, which we introduced earlier, Azure Portal as well. So all the capabilities that are available in the Azure portal are also available through the PowerShell CLI. Okay. The functionality initially released through the APIs will be represented in the portal within 180 days for initial release. Actually, I want to add something because the Azure module you installed, you may notice it's in preview, right? When you install the module, actually the command for that is install AD Azure module preview. It's have a preview there, so that's what it means. So choose the tools and APIs that works best for you. They have the same capability and provide consistent results. The following image, which is one here, this image, right? So this portal command version, the tools for you to manage, right? Pardon me. So this image shows how the tools interact with the same Azure Resource Manager API. So the API, so what it do is it pass the request to the Resource Manager services, and in which they authenticate and authorize the request. So the Resource Manager then routes the request to the appropriate resource providers. So some of the benefits of this, why we call it resource manager, or we have this idea of a resource manager, the functionality. So you can deploy, manage, and monitor all the resources for your solution as a group. So everything is one single entity, right? So rather than handling these solutions individually, like on-prem, right? You have, all those servers in different place, all the, switches, networks, or you have your SAN, DAS, NAS, everything scattered across your server room. Another benefit is you can repeatedly deploy your solutions through the development life cycle, and have confidence your resources are deployed in the constant state. So which this actually it means that you can copy whatever, not really copy the resource, but the way you deploy the resource, the settings for the resource, the metadata for the resource into one template, so you can deployment later on. So for example, you have this, as a developer, sometimes you require the same environment or just tweak a little bit of the environment to do some testing, right? But if for example you want to do this, even for me, I'm really familiar with it. You give me all the specs from the R&D, want me to deploy everything, like an Azure you connect everything to your directory, and you have which server and this and that. In the network IP address need to be 10.0.0.3/24, something like that. You have all the specs. For me to deploy it, it takes me, I don't know, the last time it took me around 45 minutes or so to get it done. But also small tweaks are required after it's been deployed, because they found some errors within. So that's really inconvenient in a way, right? Even though it's cloud, it's really powerful, but still, that's not convenient if you just do this one by one, add machine, add machine, add machine, connect, create network and connect them together, do the pairing, etc., right? I won't list. So that's what it means, right? You can have a constant way of deploying things. But we will introduce this feature later on. It's called the template, Azure template, ARM template, right? So some of the terminology you have to go through. So uh, yeah, so this is the reading part, which is the boring part as well. So a resource, right? The resource is a manageable item that is available through the Azure. So some common resources are like we always use a virtual machine, the storage account, web app, database, virtual network, but there are more, right? There are more. Like I said, let's just go through real quick, right? If you click resource, so that's not even everything. It lists the compute. What do you have? Compute, and so you have the Ubuntu server, the Red Hat, this, etc., right? And networking, you have virtual network load balancer, gateway, front door, firewall, virtual WAN, express route, etc. Storage, mobile container, database, container technology. This is, by the way, this will be not on the exam. All right, it's very fun, interesting, but not about be on the exam. All right, Kubernetes, yeah, that's what we know. Analytics, AI, machine learning, integration, security, identity, Azure AD. So there's a more, right? There's actually more, but we won't be going over it. It's even got blockchain as well. So that's what a resource means. Okay. So next is the resource group. So it's a logical grouping of resource. So it's a container that holds related resource for Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution, or only those resources that you want to manage as a group. So you decide how you want to allocate resource to resource group based on what makes the most sense for your organization. So you can say you can have one of the R&D thing. We have a project like we're doing the uh, machine learning, right? You can have the resource group for machine learning. So everything in there are relevant, right? The network, virtual machines, resources, they are interacting with each other. So for you to manage and see the metrics and everything, that's will be easy. And also you can see the money it's charged for this resource group, right? So it's easy for you to manage because they're related as one solution. But however, it doesn't mean you cannot put irrelevant things in one lab. Of course you can. It's a group, right? You can put everything in the group. But that you have to decide how you want to really, the purpose of that group is. So for me, just give you an idea. So for me, I have three groups, right? So the one resource group here, Cloud Shell Storage, blah, blah, blah. So that's dedicated for my Cloud Shell. And I also have one called Lab. So this one is the one I manage all my virtual machines actually. So you can, if I click here, all my virtual machine besides the Linux, right? They are all, for example, let me turn off the real quick. So I don't want to waste any money here. So yeah, all of the resources here, virtual machines here, they actually joined one of the domains I own, deltasuite.com. So they're responsible for me to do my demos for some of the customers and partners, like for Exchange Hybrid, or SCCM and SharePoint Hybrid, etc., or mail migration, file share migration, all those. So they are one single entity, right? Solution. So it's actually a simulation for on-prem environment. That's why I put all of them in one of the resource group. Where is that? Yeah, here in my lab. That's why I call it a lab, right? So this one of the way you can treat that. Okay, let me just go back. So come next, resource provider. So I will talk about this first, right? This is the poorly structured. So what's the resource provider? It's a service that supplies the resource you can deploy and manage through the resource manager. Each resource provider offers options for working with the resource that are deployed. Some common resource providers are like Microsoft Compute, which supplies a virtual machine resource, Microsoft Storage, which supplies a storage account resource, and Microsoft Web, give the web apps. Okay, so come next is the important one. So the Azure Resource Manager template, right? For short, it's ARM template. So it's a JavaScript object notation or JSON file, right? That defines one or more resources to deploy to a resource group. It also defines a dependency between the deployed resources. The template can be used to deploy the resource consistently and repeatedly, like we introduced before. So you don't have to, do everything over again here. You can just download the templates and do the customization on your own if you require small tweaks. It's really convenient, and there are a lot of existing template out there, really good ones in GitHub for you to download. We should come and demonstrate in the next session probably because we are already close on running out of time, right? So what is the declarative syntax? So the syntax that lets you state here is what I intend to create, right? Without having to write the sequence of programming commands to create it. The resource manager template is an example of declarative syntax. In the file, you define the properties for the infrastructure to deploy to Azure. One important thing to know is before getting started with deploying your resource, you should have an understanding of the available resources providers. Knowing the names of the resource providers and resource helps you to define the resource you want to deploy to Azure. Also, to know the validated location API versions of each resource type, so you don't miss anything because sometimes it's cloud, you can delete everything, restart, but sometimes we prefer not to use the term irreversible, but yeah, if in production environment, it's pretty much a mess if you do not plan this carefully. Especially for R&D people, if you are the IT admin, you did this for them, I get several complaints uh, for those folks. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so this will be the structure you see here. So on the top level, you have the enterprise subscription or subscription, right? You can have multiple. So there are four. So the one you're probably gonna use is I prefer is pay as you go along the practice and or the free account. After the free account is run out, you can have multiple if you choose. Anyway, so on the top you have the enterprise subscription, and coming down you have the resource group. And within the resource group, you can have your resources, right? So any resource they can be deployed to any new or existing resource groups. And the deployment of the resource to a resource group become a job where you can track the template execution. If the deployment fails, the output of the job can describe why the deployment fails. So you have these logs and notifications, the bell sign we saw earlier. So whether the deployment a single resource to a group or a template to a group, you can use the information to fix any errors and do the redeployment. Also, the deployments are incremental. So if a resource group contains 2 web apps, you decide to deploy a third, the existing web apps will not be removed. Remember, will not be removed. And currently, the immutable deployments are not supported in a resource group. So to implement the immutable deployment, you must create a new resource group. And the guidance for creating the resource group. So there are some important factors you have to consider first before you defining your resource group, right? All the resources in your group should share the same life cycle. So you deploy, update, and delete them together. So if one resource, such as a database server, needs to exist on a different deployment cycle, it should be in another resource group, right? And second, each resource can only exist in one resource group. Third, you can add or remove resource group to a resource group at any time. Right, so it doesn't matter. So the resource group, once it's created, it led you to abuse it, right? You can add, remove anything you want. It can be an empty resource group, or it can be a resource group containing everything in your organization. It doesn't matter. But we prefer not to do that, because otherwise, if someone delete this resource group, then everything's purged. A resource group can also contain resources that reside in different regions. So it's no problem, because you can see mine here as a demonstration. So if I close this real quick, my labs, right? You can see the virtual machines. They are in different region, right? Mostly in Japan East, but you can see there are one in East Asia or just East Asia, and then yeah. So it doesn't have to be in one location. So you can across the locations, no problem, right? So a resource group can also be used to scope access control for administration actions. Right, so you don't want someone to have all the permissions to do it. So you might customize it on your own, limit the actions someone has. And also a resource can interact with resource in another resource group. This is no problem, right? So this interaction is common, when the two resource groups are related but don't share the same life cycle. Remember, we talked about the first point, right? They generally share the same life cycle. But yeah, they can interact with each other. It's no problem actually. It's the same as your machine interact with other machines, right? You can purge the other machine without affecting your current machine. It's okay. So when creating a resource group, you need to provide a location that's for the resource group, right? You may be wondering, why does a resource group need a location, right? And if the resource can have different locations, then the resource group, why does the resource group location matters at all? So someone have these questions when I give them the training. So the resource group stores metadata about the resources. So therefore, when you specify a location for the resource group, you are specifying where that metadata is stored. For compliance reasons, you may need to ensure that your data is stored in one particular region. That's the reason why it's also need a location for this. Actually, all the resource you need to choose later on requires you to specify a location. Well, some doesn't, but yeah, majority does if for you to choose a location, right? So anyway, the sequence actually for you to get started for Azure is don't go ahead just create a virtual machine. Although if you do that, you slowly and read everything, you might learn how it works, but generally, like these lines box says, you first have got a subscription, right? Doesn't matter which one it is. You create this one and you create a resource group. After you create a resource group, you put the resource inside the group. That's the way to do that. Of course, if you don't do any of this, you just say, I just want the database created. No problem. But you see along the way, it will first ask you names. After that, it's which resource group you want to put it in. If no, there's a button ask you to create a new one. Right? So that's why you have a resource group first. So yeah, so there's our session for this one. So it's been 45 minutes. I will continue this session in the continue this resource manager logs and ARM templates in the next session.